International Short Stories, Volume 2, English Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynn Thompson. International Short Stories, Volume 2, English Stories, edited by William Patten. Section 21. The Stickit Minister. By S. R. Crockett. The Renunciation of Robert Fraser, formerly student in divinity. The crows were wheeling behind the plough in scattering clusters, and plumping singly upon the soft, thick grubs which the ploughshare was turning out upon an unkindly world. It was a bask, blowy day in the end of March, and there was a hint of storm in the air, a hint emphasized for those skilled in weather lore by the presence of half a dozen sea-gulls, while vagrants among the blackcoats, blown by the south wind up from the Solway, a snell, Scotch, but not unfriendly day altogether. Robert Fraser bent to the plough-handles, and cast a keen and wary eye towards his guide-posts on the ridge. His face was colourless, even when a dash of rain came swirling across the crest of Ben Gairn, whose steep bulk heaved itself a blue haystack above the level horizon of the moorland. He was dressed like any other ploughman of the south uplands, rough homespun, much the worse for wear, and leggings the colour of the red soil which he was reversing with the share of his plough. Yet there was that about Robert Fraser which marked him no common man. When he paused at the top of the ascent, and stood with his back against the horns of the plough, the countryman's legacy from Adam of the mattock, he pushed back his weather-beaten straw hat with a characteristic gesture, and showed a white forehead with blue veins channelling it, a damp, heavy lock of black hair clinging to it, as in Seven's picture of John Keats on his death-bed. Robert Fraser saw a couple of black specks which moved smoothly and evenly along the top of the distant dyke of the highway. He stood still for a moment or two, watching them. As they came nearer, they resolved themselves into a smart young man sitting in a well-equipped gig, drawn by a showily actioned hone, and driven by a man in livery. As they passed rapidly along the road, the hand of the young man appeared, in a careless wave of recognition over the stone dyke, and Robert Fraser lifted his slack reins in staid acknowledgment. It was more than a year since the brothers had looked each other so nearly in the eyes. They were Dr. Henry Fraser, the rising physician of Carn Edward, and his elder brother, Robert, once student of divinity at Edinburgh College, whom 3 parishes knew as the Stickit Minister. When Robert Fraser stabled his horse that night and went into his supper, he was not surprised to find his friend, Saunders Machear of Drumquhat, sitting by the peat fire in the room. Almost the only thing which distinguished the Stickit Minister from the other small farmers of the parish of Dullarg was the fact that he always sat in the evening by himself, ben the hoose, and did not use the kitchen in common with his housekeeper and herd-boy, save only at meal-times. Robert had taken to Saunders ever since, the back of his ambition broken. He had settled down to the farm, and he welcomed him with shy cordiality. "You'll take a cup of tea, Saunders?" he asked. "Thank you, Robert. I wouldna be wurt," returned his friend. "I saw your brother the day," said Saunders Machear, after the teacups had been cleared away and the silent housekeeper had replaced the books upon the table. Saunders picked a couple of them up, and, having adjusted his glasses, he read the titles, Milton's work, and a volume of a translation of Dorner's Person of Christ. "I saw your brither the day. He mun be getting a big practice." "Ay," said Robert Fraser very thoughtfully. Saunders Machear glanced up quickly. It was of course natural that the unsuccessful elder brother should envy the prosperous younger, but he had thought that Robert Fraser was living on a different plane. It was one of the few things that the friends had never spoken of, though every one knew why Dr. Fraser did not visit his brother's little farm. "He's getting in wi' the big folk noo, and thinks maybe that his brither would do him the credit." That was the way the clash of the countryside explained the matter. "I never told you how I came to leave the college, Saunders," said the younger man, resting his brow on a hand that even the horn of the plough could not make other than diaphanous. "No," said Saunders quietly, with a tender gleam coming into the humoursome eyes that lurked under the bushy tussocks of grey eyebrow. Saunders's humour lay near the fountain of tears. "No," continued Robert Fraser, "I have not spoken it to so many. But you've been a good friend to me, Saunders, and I think you should hear it. I have not tried to set myself right with folks in the general, but I would like to let you see clearly before I go my ways to him who seeth from the beginning." "Hear tell 'em," said Saunders. "Man, your hoast is no near as sair as it was in the back end. You'll be here lang after me. But lang and short, well do you ken, Robert Fraser, that ye need not to pitch yoursel' right with me. I ha' no kenned ye since ye was the sick o' the two scrubbers." "I thank you, Saunders," said Robert, "but I am well aware that I'm to die this year. No, no, not a word. It is the Lord's will. It's mair than 7 year now since I first kenned that my days were to be few. It was the year my feyther died, and left Harry and me by a lane. He left no siller to speak of, just plenty to lay him decently in the kirkyard among his forebears. I had been a year at the Divinity Hall then, and was going up to put my discourses for the next session. I had been troubled with my breast for some time, and so called one day at the infirmary to get a word with Sir James. He was very busy when I went in, and never noticed me till the host took me. Then on a sudden he looked up from his papers, came quickly over to me, put his own white handkerchief to my mouth, and said quietly, 'Come into my room, laddie.' Ay, he was a good man and a faithful, Sir James, if ever there was one. He told me that with care I might live 5 or 6 years, but it would need great care. Then a strange prickly coldness came over me, and I seemed to walk light-headed in an atmosphere suddenly rarefied, and I think I know now how the mouse feels under the air-pump." "What's that?" queried Saunders. "A cruel ploy not worth speaking of," continued the Stickit Minister. "Well, I found something in my throat when I tried to thank him, but I came my ways home to the Dullarg. Night and day I considered what was to be done, with so much to do and so little time to do it. It was clear that both Harry and me could not gang through the college on the little my father had left, so late one night I saw my way clear to what I should do. Harry must go, I must stay. I must come home to the farm and be my own man. Then I could send Harry to the college to be a doctor, for he had no call to the ministry as once I thought I had. More than that, it was laid on me to tell Jessie London that Robert Fraser was no better than a machine set to go 5 year. Now all these things I did, Saunders, but there's no use telling you what they cost me in doing. They were right to do, and they were done. I do not repent any of them. I would do them all over again, were they to do it, but it's been bitterer than I thought." The Stickit Minister took his head off his hand and leaned wearily back in his chair. "The story went over the country that I had failed in my examinations, and I never said that I had not. But there were some that knew better who might have contradicted the report if they had liked. I settled down to the farm, and I put Harry through the college, sending all but a bare living to him in Edinburgh. I worked the work of the farm, rain and shine, ever since. I have been for these 6 years the Stickit Minister that all the world kens the day. Whiles Harry did not think that he got enough. He was always writing for more, and not so very pleased when he did not get it. He was aye different to me, ye ken, Saunders, and he canna be judged by the same standard as you and me." "I ken," said Saunders M'Quhirr, a spark of light lying in the quiet of his eyes. "Well," continued Robert Fraser, lightened by Saunders's apparent agreement, "the time came when he was clear from the college and wanted a practice. He had been ill advised that he had not got his share of the farm, and he wanted it selled to share and share alike. Now I kenned, as you ken, Saunders, that it's no worth much in one share, let alone two. So I got the place quietly bonded, and bought him old Dr. Aitken's practice in Cairn Edward with the money. I have tried to do my best for the lad, for it was laid on me to be my brother's keeper. He doesna come here much," continued Robert, "but I think he's not so ill against me as he was. Saunders, he waved his hand to me when he was going by the day." "That was kind of him," said Saunders M'Quhirr. "Ay, was it no?" said the Stickit Minister. eagerly, with a soft look in his eyes as he glanced up at his brother's portrait in cap and gown, which hung over the china dogs on the mantelpiece. "I got my notice this morning that the bond is to be called up in November," said Robert, "so I'll be obliged to flit." Saunders M'Quhirr started to his feet in a moment. "Never!" he said, with the spark of fire alive now in his eyes. "Never as long as there's a beast on Trwm Quat, or a pound in Caernarvon Bank," bringing down his clenched fist upon the Milton on the table. "No, Saunders, no," said the Stickit Minister, very gently. "I thank you kindly, but I'll be flitted before that." Section 22.